Welcome to Peace of Mind for Pet Parents, the podcast by BrightHaven Caregiver Academy. I'm Gail Pope.
And I'm Karen Wylie. And together we're here to support you in navigating life with your aging or ill pets. We know how deeply you care for your beloved companions, and we're here to offer guidance, understanding, and resources for this meaningful journey.
Each episode, we'll explore topics that address the daily challenges, emotional realities, and choices you face as a pet parent, helping you and your pets find peace, comfort, and joy. Whether it's making sense of a new diagnosis, adjusting to changing needs, or simply seeking a place to feel understood, you're not alone. Thank you for being here with us.
Hello, and thank you for joining us at Peace of Mind for Pet Parents. I'm Karen Wylie, here as always with Gail Pope. Today we're going to talk about something that seems pretty simple on the surface, but it can make a profound difference in your pet's comfort level and your own peace of mind. So we're going to talk about creating a sanctuary space in your home for a pet who's dealing with some kind of an illness, whether it's chronic, difficult, or ultimately a terminal diagnosis. We've talked a lot about mobility aids and adaptive equipment and things like that, but today we're going to go a little deeper in talking about the whole environment that your pets have in your home. The lighting, the sounds, the temperature, the emotional feeling in a space. Because Gail and I have both learned through many decades of caregiving that where your pet lives matters as much as the medical treatments that they might be getting. So as we think about this, Gail, you created sanctuary spaces for just a few pets over the years. I'm looking forward to hearing what your thoughts are about creating and really making a space that truly supports the healing and comfort of the pet. So when you think about a sanctuary space, whether you were creating at BrightHaven or any of the pet parents that you help them create one in their own home, what are some of the first things you consider?
It's not a subject I've really ever thought about.
You just did it. You just did it all.
Yes, exactly. That's the first part of my answer is I'm thinking back to the sanctuary, and I'm also thinking of in the present and how those two things fit together, sanctuary, safe space. Then I'm realizing that I think what we all start with is our house, the actual house that the animals live in with us, the environment that we've created, generally with a front door, so we're all shut in. It's the ambience. Maybe I think in the early days of BrightHaven, feng shui came into my mind, or into my life rather, and made some changes in the way I started to look at energy and feel the energy of a room move and be different. If there's something kind of blocking the flow from where the door comes in, you can feel it when you start to step into that environment. So I think it really is the house. The animal plays a huge part in that because, however, let's face it, probably most of our audience have had a cat or a dog sometime and they bought them a new bed and they've put it in that perfect place. And the animal goes, very nice, but I'm not going in that. And you move it somewhere else, or the dog even picks it up and comes, can't you see I wanted to be here? So it's working together as a team, and some may like squishy beds that they can climb into and be cuddly. Luckily for us at the sanctuary, we had lots of different types of beds with high sides, low sides, walk in, climb in, all sorts of different options. And they would choose what they wanted. So I think sanctuary has to be a two-way street. As animals get older, what was practical for them at one point may not be practical for them in later years or in illness. At that point, you have to start looking, as you said, at mobility and do they need steps? Do they need a ramp? Do they just need a bed on the floor? We had a wonderful bed donated to us at one time, which you've probably seen in photographs. It was for Ollie. Ollie was a dachshund getting close to the end of his life. He'd lived in a wheelchair pretty much 24 hours a day, maybe not that much, for all the years he was with us. But then as he started to decline towards the end of his life, it was really clear. For a while, he could still be in his chair for a little while, and other times he would not want to be in his chair. But to find the proper bed, oh, and it came along by mail. It was a four-poster, a traditional four-poster bed, handmade for this dog. It was incredible. It was probably about, I don't know, maybe 5 foot by 3 foot. It had the four posts each corner,
Mm.
and it was literally maybe that far off the floor. In the early part, when he was using, he could actually get himself off and on it, but later on he couldn't. But it was the perfect sanctuary. That came into my mind as sanctuary for him
Right.
and for the rest of the family, because all the other cats and dogs could take turns and go share. He usually had 5 or 6 cats with him. Not dogs quite so often. Generally, they were a little bit bigger, and the cats were more his bosses than anything. Yes, as cats will. But yes, the perfect sanctuary is based on the environment, the ambience. I think the music, the noise or non-noise can be very important. And the position. So yes, it's a team effort.
Did you notice a difference between dogs and cats? What they needed, what they preferred, or how they adapted over time?
I think probably, ooh, gosh, I've got so many memories that I have to try and go back through. I think overall, there was a pretty big difference in cats and dogs, mainly because of the abilities of cats. Even cats scooting on their bottoms could still skim up a 6 foot cat tree very often. Talia was famous for having people go, and doing that. But in general, cats got more bendy bodies. They are more mobile and efficient at jumping, climbing. Dogs are much more steady on at ground level or on the couch, maybe. So I think there's a little bit of difference, but each still has the ability to choose their favorite safe place.
Right. Where it's very much an individual, personalized process.
I think so. It has to be. Otherwise, it wouldn't be involving the animal. So many times, I'm sure many other people have done. You've created this beautiful space, and then you find the cat in an old bed in the corner of a different room. So
Right.
you have to go with the flow and see what they want. Towards the end of life, quite often a cat or even a dog, smaller dogs particularly, make sure you leave your closet door open and you'll find one of them curled up in a corner. They
Yeah.
wanted somewhere quiet.
Right.
That was, for some reason, what they chose. Others may curl up under the bed. And as humans, very often, especially when an animal's not well, the instinct is, oh, come on, you can't be under there. And you pull them
Right.
out. Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should just allow.
Yeah, that's a great point to bring out. And it's the kind of thing I've experienced too, where, especially more with cats than with dogs, but whether cats or dogs, they all still have been able to rely on their bodies, the strength of their bodies for their safety,
Yes.
for expressing themselves, for getting out of a particular situation that is uncomfortable or something they have fear about. So then when they're getting sicker and less mobile and have less immediate response from their bodies, that's certainly when I would see more of not necessarily withdrawal, not where they wanted to be totally away from everything, but because they know they don't have the same strength and control over their body to get out of there if they need. So they seem to be like getting into the corner of the couch more than being out on the arm. Or they're just seeking something that gives them a little more, I guess, a sense of physical safety. I see more of that with the cats than the dogs, I think, but I've always had larger dogs too. My Aussies are the kind of the smallest I've had, and they're still pretty big. I do think as their illnesses progress and they have less control and confidence in their body, that they do start changing their preferences of what is considered the best place or a good place or a safe place.
I think that's especially if you think about it from the human standpoint. When we don't feel well, or we're out of sorts, or just not ourselves, or just plain getting older, we have a certain vulnerability that appears. And when you feel vulnerable, what do? You look for comfort. So, yes, you just described exactly that. That was really occurring to me. I'm just thinking we had a cat called Spotty one time, very innovative name, especially as she was a striped tabby. She was adorable.
Oh.
However, she was fearful. And once she was free to go where she wanted to in the house, that became under my bed.
Yeah.
And that cat lived under my bed for a whole year. She would
Yeah.
come out in the dead of night occasionally and just peek around, and I would sit and talk to her, and then she'd go back. It
Yeah.
took her a whole year before finally one day she literally strutted into the middle of the living room and said, "Hi, everybody. Oh, are you taking treats around?" Her vulnerability was such that she had to have that sanctuary for as long as she needed it. Not ours to judge. It was up to when she just had the urge to be who she was.
Right.
So I think we have to really remember that with our animals, that as they age, become less mobile or have an illness, that they are going to want a different kind of environment that feels more safe and comfortable.
Yes. And if I would say too that whatever disease or condition they have does affect their ability to move their body, that you tend to see more of an extreme of need for safety. At least that's what I've seen.
As well as one other thing that I think perhaps sometimes people neglect to think about, although they will get reminded eventually. For cats would be the litter box, particularly. The litter box has always been downstairs and now they're upstairs, and people don't think to necessarily either provide another one upstairs, particularly in
Right.
the earlier days when going up and down the stairs isn't so easy, but they're
Right.
still doing it, that kind of thing, having always have had the litter box in this room. Now she's more comfortable in the living room and she's spending more time there. So let's take the litter box. And then
Right.
you can move that conversation straight into the water bowls conversation. Maybe moving the litter bowls or having an extra litter bowl. If they come to the kitchen to eat, there's probably going to be one there. But if they're in bed a lot more, let's have another one there.
So the placement of everything is important, and also then the height. In
Yes.
terms of, I always start choosing the litter boxes, litter pans with the shorter, so it's easier for them to get in and out. The same thing with feeding and water bowls, where you can get them where they're raised up so that they're not craning their little necks down. So you can start thinking about other ways you can adapt to what's going on with them.
I was just thinking about these lovely pictures that come into my mind. Okay, so today you're going to meet Molly. Molly was a beautiful orange lady. She was just delightful. She'd come to us when an elderly lady simply couldn't care for her anymore. And she made her home in my kitchen on the countertop. If you've seen photographs, we had several beds there, but Molly chose, actually, she had to help me. She explained it to me because what she went into the kitchen onto the countertop. Of course, there was a convenient step stool so animals could get up if they needed to. She sat down by one of the fountains that was on like a little L-shaped piece that came around the corner. And she sat on this piece facing the fountain. She had a drink and then she sat down. She looked around and she looked up, and across the bar there were three big, lovely, cozy baskets. She looked at those. She looked at me. She stayed where she was. I don't know how long it took me, but eventually the thought came into my mind, I wonder if I should put a bed on that countertop there. I wonder if she'd like that. And so that was it. She lived there until she was dying. Then she got down one day and she walked very slowly all the way to our clinic. She'd never even been in there before that we knew of. And she sat down, looked up at our big wet table in the middle, and I thought, this is really bizarre, really bizarre. So I picked her up and sat her in the wet table, and she just sat there, and then she laid down. And I said to Blanca, she can't stay here. What are we going to do? Well, I'm in here. I'm going to keep an eye on her. You come and back if a volunteer comes. So we let her do that. She ended up there for the last 2.5 weeks of her life. One of the other cats, whose name escapes me at this very moment, moved in with her. And we were a lot happier with that then because he supervised and volunteers would come and go, or she'd sit and do Reiki. And Molly stayed there the whole time.
Wow.
So she chose her environment and we had to go along with it. It was a little scary, but she made it really clear, I'm not going to try and jump all the way down to the floor from what, probably 4 foot high. So of course, we had steps and all sorts of
Right.
things in case she did, but she didn't. That was her place, and she was going to be there until the end of her life.
So interesting to literally go from one place to another, and a real extreme change, but she was ready for it.
Until that time, she had been in the kitchen in that bed. And then she literally just very gently, like the regal lady she was, she walked very gently round quite a long way from the kitchen, round
Right.
the side of the house, past the front door, and turned right into the clinic. She knew exactly where she was going. It was very strange, but then we're only human, aren't we?
We all have our preferences too, as sentient beings that we are.
Okay.
Most of us don't have physical sanctuaries with a clinic room. What advice would you give to pet parents about thinking about where in their house would be a good place, especially as an animal begins to not be very mobile and perhaps hygiene comes into play where there needs to be some adaptation to the physical environment? What would you say to pet parents who are trying to think about what space in their home they should devote to this?
Probably the best advice is whatever you think first, forget it, because they're going to want to do whatever you thought of first. It's really all about observation. It's knowing them well in normal life, but you have to be vigilant. They may well explore a little bit while they're thinking, oh, I don't know if I want to stay in that place. A lot of cats, particularly, and well, dogs too, have their own bed, their own favorite couch, their own favorite things. So if you notice that changing, well, first of all, if mobility becomes an issue and the cat or the dog was usually comfy on the couch, then you're going to put steps there or a ramp. You're going to make sure that they have an easier way up. But then you may find they're not going up so much. So now you've got to be observant to see where are they favoring? Are they going into the bedroom? Oh, what about that chair in the corner of the bedroom? Maybe I'll put a step stool in front of that chair and some blankets. We'll just see. Maybe they want to go there. Maybe the dog just needs extra help to get to the bed. There's so many different types of bed steps
Right.
available these days. It's
True.
scary trying to choose the right one,
That's right.
for the couch or the bed. A dog or a cat who's slept with you most of their life will, in my experience, will go either way. They may suddenly make a point, I'm not sleeping with you anymore, and that is horribly hard on your heart. Or they'll be even more pushy and telling you to move over a bit more in bed, and they're wrapped around you all every single day to the rest of their life. But you've got to let the animal dictate, otherwise you will have a very frustrating journey.
You've spoken about bedding and hygiene and layering the bedding in other podcasts, but without sending our listeners or viewers to other podcasts, what can you share about something to keep in mind about the layering of the bedding and so forth for hygienic purposes?
I think it's one of the most wonderful things you can do to help yourself. We're always preaching care for yourself, but when you're caring for one or more animal who is experiencing immobility or some kind of end of life situation where they're not necessarily continent anymore. The more you can save yourself from having to do huge piles of washing every few hours. So, what I found was, first of all, you can buy incontinence pads. I'm sure lots of people are familiar with those. Some of them are washable in various sizes and shapes. They're very valuable to have for certain situations where they're probably not going to get wet, but you just want to be sure because they're nice and soft. Then you have your paper ones, the disposables, which they're a bit slippery. Obviously, you're going to put a bed on top, a blanket of some sort, but they have a different feel for the animal than something that isn't plasticized and slippery. So anyway, I would start with the washable one, and then I'd put a blanket on top. Then I'd put another disposable one, and then another. And depending on the animal and the need, I'd put maybe 4 layers so that if they had a small accident, if it was a cat, I could probably stroke them, lift them up, and just take the two top pieces away, then stroke them again and pop them back down again. If it was a bigger dog, then I'd be able to roll them from one side to the other and then roll out, roll back, and then take it away. I think in those situations, it would really help to be qualified as a human nurse
Yeah, really.
to change the bedding. It can be quite an art with a big dog, I can tell you.
That's the truth. That gives everybody some guidance as to think ahead because at the beginning you don't think they don't really need all that. But
That's
what
right.
you're talking about is when they need it, you can just remove that layer.
I thought of another thing that I learned fairly early on. Cats, dogs, and humans very often drool, especially towards the end of life or in an illness. So when you are doing your layering, you might also think about The incontinence pads I buy, I generally cut them into smaller pieces, but you're not going to put something like that. You've got to think of the aesthetic. So I would put like a piece of toweling, like a face flannel underneath, but with an incontinence layer under that.
Oh,
So if
wow.
they drool, generally you just take the toweling part away and it hasn't got you
Yeah.
see all the time. So you just take the top part and just put it in a clean one. They're quick and easy to wash and they're nice and soft and cozy. That can save a lot of time.
Yes, I'm sure it can. I never thought of that. That's great. All right. We've talked about how a pet's needs are going to change as their condition changes
Yeah.
or their strength changes. What about households with multiple pets? Now, you always had lots of pets in the sanctuary. How would you advise a pet parent to approach it if they do have multiple pets?
Exactly the same as we've just discussed.
Okay.
Basically, the thoughts, ideas that I've had so far are based on my sanctuary days with lots of animals. It really is on just being attentive because if you've got a house with 5 cats and 3 dogs, you've got 8 different personalities. You've got male cats, female cats, and same with the dogs. They've all got their own choices and preferences. And so if someone's not well, then your focus, instead of doing this, goes a little bit like, okay, and you're just narrowed in on what does she particularly like best and who does she usually sleep with and how can I help that habit? Or you really have to look into their life to see how you can maneuver comfort around them as they change their physical ability or emotional,
Right.
mental ability.
As I was thinking about this consideration and how it's affected me in my home, I talk about Mr. Hope so often, who died 2.5 years ago. But the reason that Livy and Shay, the two Aussies, grieve his loss is because Hope raised those puppies. He'd never been around another dog. So, of course, at the beginning, he could not believe we did this to him and brought Shay into his life. But they became very close. Then, 2 years later, when Livy came, they had the same very strong relationship. As Hope became weaker, it was never a consideration for me that I needed to protect him from the Aussies and all their energy because he chose to continue being with them. But fortunately, I'll use Callie, who's so often, it's cold today, which is why I am wearing this. We have snow today, and she's burrowing over in a chair over there. So she's not right here, but usually she is. And yet, Callie and her brother, they were feral when they showed up in the yard, and I raised them. But then I brought them upstairs here to the office because they were kittens, and I wanted to get them where they were not staying under the bed, and I wanted them out getting comfortable with day to day, not catching their tail in the refrigerator and so forth. But Callie doesn't like any other cats. That's a big deal for her, and she's never had to deal with dogs. My choices for Callie would be very different. So, just as you're saying, you have to adapt everything based on the personality
Yeah.
of the pets and also the life that they have lived with you.
Yeah. You're reminding me of my mum now. It's the same again for humans and for animals. We have to use respect and observation and adaptation. I guess adapting to and moving along with changes in quality of life and living are what we're talking about. It is the same for an elderly person as an elderly animal.
It's very often we're in the caregiver role regardless and needing to make choices. But as you're saying, the choices and the decisions need to be made around the needs of our patient.
Yep, 100%.
When you've been consulting with pet parents about this kind of topic where they're trying to figure out what to do for their pet at home, is there anything in particular that you find that pet parents tend to overlook or not think about initially?
Again, that probably would be the incontinent layering, incontinence bedding. A lot of people, I know I didn't think about it for a long time until my washing machine basically said, excuse me, I can't keep doing this.
Yeah, and you were living in there all day.
No, I think as humans, most of us have been used to adapting to a human in our life, whether a child or an older person or a husband, a spouse, or anybody that they may have cared for through anything like a serious cold to a severe illness of some sort. So I think we actually have a natural ability to do these things. It's a matter of just kicking into gear and actually really realizing that we need to pay attention.
And a different kind of attention as their physical body loses strength, because I tend to really try to make sure that they feel safe as their condition worsens in ways that they never felt a need to rule their life by being safe. And that's true for all of us when we're living our lives without conditions that we're worried about.
That's
But
right.
with our pets, that's certainly number one for me is, are they going to feel safe in this particular situation? But as you're saying, as long as we're watching the choices that they're making, that's going to probably be our best guidance.
I think so.
We're really not talking about making everything perfect here. It's really about just starting to pay attention to what they need and adapting as you go.
I think the word comfort sums it up. That's all we're really seeking, is comfort of every kind for our animal as well as ourselves and our family. It's the family comfort. It's the house we live in, so it's creating the right atmosphere, the right ambience in the house.
Yeah, because you don't need a dedicated room for this. You don't need a whole lot of expensive equipment.
No.
It really is just allowing your pet to continue to live their life the way they want as long as possible.
That sounds perfect.
So in creating a sanctuary space, I guess you just got to start. You start with one thing and just move forward. I think I know what you're going to say as closing advice.
Couldn't be anything about baby steps, could it?
Can't be anything about baby
Oh,
steps.
yeah, baby steps with lots of love.
With lots of love. There you go.
That'll fit. But it's true. Our animals lead us anyway. We don't have to learn these things. We just have to be open. It's all about connection. It's a loving connection. We know what they need. The way they tell us what they need is something that we don't necessarily always dig deeper into, but that's for another conversation.
Another conversation. We've touched on it today, though, which I think is good. Thank you all for joining us today. And if you have found this discussion helpful, please share this episode with another pet parent out there who might also need to hear it. Do remember you're not alone in this journey. That's what this podcast is for. That's what our consults are for. That's what our Caregivers Hub is for, whether it's for a month or many months, whatever length of time you need support, we are here for you. So until the next time, take care of yourself and your wonderful companions. Thanks for being with us. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for joining us on Peace of Mind for Pet Parents. We hope today's episode has offered you support and insight as you care for your aging or ill pets.
Remember, it's not just about the end, it's about living well at every stage of life. To continue your journey with us, explore more resources at BrightHaven Caregiver Academy's website, brightpathforpets.com, where you'll find guides, assessments, and a caring community of pet parents like you.
Until next time, may you and your pets find comfort, connection, and peace in every moment. Take care.